Sue. Hi. So I'm chair here. When I'm joined. Should.
So you did the phone and then.
Yeah.
Okay.
But then I think I don't get the echo. So if you join the Zoom meeting without audio in the beginning.
On phone, right?
Yeah.
Joined by phone. All right, everyone, I'd like to welcome everybody to the hybrid board meeting of February 22nd. Call to order, Ms. Creighton.
Here.
Ms. Delicio.
Here.
Ms. Foley.
Here.
Mr. Olney.
Here.
Ms. Philbrick.
Here.
And Ms. Tenney.
Here.
Thank you all. Looks like we have a full quorum tonight. I'd like to remind board members and guests to be recognized by the chair if they wish to speak, and this meeting is being recorded. So tonight's meeting is about proposed zoning changes. We have a workshop, and I'd like to turn the meeting over to Vice Chair Sarah Creighton.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. As Ron said, this is tonight's meeting is to talk about proposed zoning changes in preparation for our public hearing, which is next Monday, February 27th at 7 p.m. And so we'll really be taking comments on the proposed changes at that meeting. We'll take public comment on things other than these zoning changes at the end of the meeting. This really is a workshop, but we're happy to have people here. So we have 4 changes that we would like to bring to a public hearing. Those are on the senior housing. I think all of them were proposed for the November town meeting, and among those that we passed over. And they are senior housing, regulations for adult entertainment, the administrative section, and some modifications to section 9.1, which is the accessory dwelling unit section of bylaw. So we did have a workshop 2.5 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago on the senior housing bylaw, and we had some discussion. Hopefully I captured at least those things that we had agreement on in the version that was online. We did just, like I just saw it in my email, get some comments back from town council that we should review, I guess, and decide how to handle. I just skimmed through them. I think they're wording things rather than intent, with one exception, at least in my quick read. So we'll talk about that. But do people have, I'm hesitant to bring up the bylaw, but I can. Maybe that's,
did you share what town council said?
I will share it. Yeah, it literally just came in. I thought maybe we could actually run through it. Literally just came in. Maybe have them some general, let's see if people have some any general things that they want to discuss, specific proposals, and then we can take the specifics.
We're doing senior housing.
Senior housing first. That makes sense. So let's just, as we talked about at the last, our last meeting, Chris and Betsy proposed some changes around historic district and conversion of existing structures. Those were new sections there in the redlined version as read. And then when we met in our workshop, we added a few changes. Most substantively, we added a section that said each dwelling unit shall be occupied by at least one person over the age of 55, and all other residents shall be over the age of 18. And we made some small modifications on building height and also on accessory uses. Those are the things that like barber shop, transportation, little cafe, that those were at the sole discretion of the planning board during the special permit application. So the idea here was that those additional services were more appropriate in a larger facility and should be part of the special permit review. So those are the changes that were highlighted in the online version. Happy to share them, but I think that's, but anyway. So any discussion on the content of the proposed bylaw as was, or do people want me to share it? How do we proceed? Yeah.
So what actually, so I'm just gonna go in order. And
I guess would make sense to share. Sorry, Mary.
Yeah.
But just
Yeah, so we can
read
see.
along as Mary's speaking.
Yep.
so while you're queuing that up, my first proposal, which I brought up at the February 9th meeting, was that we split the senior housing into two bylaws. One senior housing bylaw and one senior housing facilities bylaw. I think depending on those two very different uses, the districts that they would be in and some of the requirements would be different. So I'd like for the board to consider that. Want to go through all my things and then we discuss, or one?
Why don't you give us the list of things you want to talk about?
So broken up by district.
Well, having a senior housing bylaw and then a separate senior housing facilities bylaw. The just minor, the 9.4.3 numbering is off. It's minor, and there's some minor typos I can do later. So 9.4.4 says that the planning board would have the power to change a building height. And I'm curious to see if we or the ZBA have that power currently.
Is that a question? Just, I think we can answer that question. I think the ZBA would, if you came and asked for a variance for height, you could get a variance. You could be considered for a variance for height and could be granted if the ZBA deemed appropriate, right?
Sure. But this isn't a variance, this is just within the special permit. So that
Special variance has really strict criteria. There has to be hardship. So I don't really think we can compare the two.
so
I think that was one of the issues that the town council, just quick skim, I think that was among the issues that the town council raised. So
Oh, good.
why don't we come back to that one?
I brought up the other night the 9.4.4.7C. I think if this were to be the language, we need to designate whether that's gross floor area or net floor area. Those are two very different calculations. With regards to 9.4.4.10 common open space, I'm unclear if this is open space in addition to the pervious requirement that we already have for districts. We did change that it needs to be contiguous, so that's good. I've seen other towns have specify in this open space that it can't be used. The open space land cannot be used for septic, right? So you can't calculate that in your open space. And then they do more specific requirements that say only 5% of the open space could be used for gravel, road, or pavement. We don't do any specifications in here. This kind of goes back to proposing that splitting out into two bylaws, because the 20% open space is not a lot, especially in districts D, G, or B. So I'm not sure what we're gaining with this, especially the current LCD open space is 80%. So I don't know which would supersede which. Be nice to also have in here that open space is the location is subject to planning board approval. We don't specify location. And also that it would be accessible to residents of the senior housing development. We don't clarify that it needs to be accessible open space.
When you say accessible, do you mean
You can walk to it.
as opposed to ADA accessible?
Correct. Yeah, like you, I mean, you
That'd be
could
a-
have a piece of land that, you know, is, I think, as we say, could be 25% wetlands and, you know, like maybe that would be the buffer, right? Like you couldn't get past the wetlands to the open space. The 9.4.4.15, the conversion of existing structures. This is giving the planning board authority to increase a nonconformity, which currently nonconformity is with the ZBA, so wasn't clear how that would work or why it would work in this situation.
It's working.
The 9.4.4.16 historic resources. I think I brought this up at the last meeting too. I don't know how we define historically significant structures, so I don't know how many we have.
That was among the comments that the.
And I did raise at that point that, you know, I think it'd be nice to have a separate historic building bylaw that encompasses everything, not just senior housing. Let's see, 9.4.4.17 is saying that an applicant could add back floors that are no longer in existence. There's gotta be, I have concerns with that, that, you know, a building is currently, say, 30 feet and somehow 50 years ago, it had another floor on it that brought it up to 57 feet or whatever it is, that could be added back with no variance. And I'm concerned about waiving the parking requirement with a change of use. And then I have a list of other things I would like to see added if we get to that.
Thank you for a thorough reading there. Why don't we just make a list of the issues that people want to raise as well as the town council's issues, and then maybe have a general discussion about where we want to go with this. So other issues that people, I apologize to those present. It's a horrible view of, you know, a dense bylaw, but I don't know how else to do it. So other issues that people have or questions that they want to discuss? Betsy, do you want to summarize before we take up yours, the KP law issues? Sounds like there were some that were language. I just made it.
I really haven't had a chance to take a good hard look at her comments because we just got them like really late today. So I haven't had a chance to digest them.
Some are formatting and language. I'm going to just whiz through these. So I think, this is not a good way to do this. I could print it. There was a comment, I don't know, a comment about applicability and a comment about building height and whether or not, to your point, it could be, we're not the special permit granting authority for height. And therefore did we want to really become the special permit granting authority for height? I think that's her question. The next, same with setbacks, or did we want to, she had some, I think that could be solved with language, but this is a quick read. The big one, I thought, was that she said, oh, I'm not sharing this, sorry, I have to unshare and just stop sharing it, reshare, it's not Teams. Sorry. sorry, I thought I was sharing. The big one here is that the,
So can I move the, just grab it and put it over to the left?
can I make it smaller?
You can also make it smaller, yeah,
Okay,
but it doesn't, no, I have to.
thanks. The big one is that the design standards for no more than two, thank you. The design standards for no more than 2 bedrooms per living unit and one bedroom bathroom to be located on the same floor, and maximum area should be 1,200 square feet, which was our intent to, our attempt, I think, to make these modest size to fill that middle. Her comment, I'm sure it's hard to read. The AG may note an issue with General Laws 40A, Section 3 provides no zoning ordinance or bylaw regulations restrict the interior area of a single-family residential building.
I don't think these are single-family residential buildings,
Right.
so I don't think it applies.
They could be.
So it'd be a question back to her.
Well, I guess you're right, they could
It could
be.
be townhouses or 2 families or 3 families.
We could just do little garden style units.
Townhouse would.
No, interestingly, other
Yeah,
towns
well,
limit to 2 bedrooms, so I'm.
Yeah, I'm sure we can limit it to 2 bedrooms for
Yeah.
seniors.
Well, she has the comment on the whole piece. And then she has some comments about the open space and how does it relate to other existing open space requirements, which is among the things that you just flagged. She just says we should get comments from police and fire. That seems reasonable. Minimum setbacks. She said, are we adding setbacks that are different than the district? And I think the answer to that was in district.
Well,
She
this is,
points out in District D,
D.
the setback is only 10 feet,
right,
so it might be good, we might say that in no case shall the setback be less
Less
than
than the
25 feet
Right,
or
right.
something.
but we also don't allow currently dumpsters and, you know,
things. in
loading
setback.
areas and things like that in residential. So I think the only thing we'd be violating here is the parking area.
And then conversion of existing structures, again,
I'll
Uh,
have to listen and
clarification.
have see if I can absorb anything from Chuck.
if you're online, can you mute?
I mute.
Okay, thanks. Which makes a few. And then she has quite a bit of comments on the historic resource area. I don't read them. Like what is a historic significant structure and so forth.
Oh my goodness, I think we would.
And so I guess, it seems to me that some of those details could be, her comments could be incorporated, at least on some of the setbacks and height and special permit.
Yeah, there's also one at the very beginning where we talk about what's allowed in the LCD,
Right,
and I think we can clarify our intent that it's,
yes,
you can't have independent living facilities.
right. So we did have this section, senior housing located in the LCD must be part of a larger complex of senior housing as defined by section 2. And she says that she recommends this be clarified.
Yeah,
So she says, I recommend at least 2 types of senior housing defined in section 2 or something else. Which is I think Mary's first point, a portion of your first point, if I understand you correctly. One is that facilities belong in different district, if I'm understanding your point, different types of facilities belong in different districts, and that rather than trying to use the special permit process alone
to do that, you think they should be specified?
Yes, and I have referenced Hamilton before, which I know some on the board are not fans of, but they're very clear that in their residential districts, they allow residential senior housing, and in their business districts, they allow assisted living, you know, daycare, places like that. So I think that makes sense. I think that's an easier sell than trying to do it all in one and missing the point on a lot of them. I think, I just don't think this senior housing bylaw is detailed enough to cover all scenarios.
How do other people
So
feel with
my
this
comment
issue on
on
the
that,
front?
my comment on that is that the special permit granting criteria would take care of that problem. And that's why we put, and I think we could take all the criteria again and duplicate them and stick them into the senior housing bylaw, which is what was traditionally done with all of our zoning bylaws, which made them very complicated. But I think if you just refer back to them, you will automatically limit the number of units, how big the building can be, because the criteria specify that the context of the neighborhood is one of the standards that we have to apply in granting a special permit. And there are a bunch of them.
I understood. I think though that with certain of these facilities, and currently we allow it, but it's just for the nonprofit sector. So if we're opening it up to the for-profit sector, within, you know, with assisted living, just use that as an example, you are going to have different things than you're going to have with senior housing. You're going to have deliveries and employee parking and dumpsters and more on-site business facilities and different lighting and emergency protocols and all that type of thing, that I think it makes sense to fully define that for the areas that could handle it.
So it is possible to have an assisted living facility with only 5 or 6 units.
Yes.
And the service provider comes in once a day, serves some meals, checks on everybody's temperatures and whatever else, and a little physical therapy, maybe some activities, and then they go. So in that case, you're saying that that kind of facility could not be done in which district?
Well, and I think that's a good thing to talk about. Then we could say, you know, 5 units and below could be in a resident, you know, like we don't define any of this. We
But I
don't.
think it should be up to us or the special permit granting authority to make that determination based on the proposal, not to try to guess as to what a proposal is going to look like and which ones would be acceptable and which ones wouldn't. So for example, let's say on Masconomo Street, the Putnam Estate, somebody wanted to turn that into an assisted living facility. Okay, so that means we'd allow it in an existing building in District E. But how can we be that specific? We're kind of spot zoning if we're doing it that way.
And agreed, but I think on the flip side, relying on a special permit is leaving the door wide open for the discretion of a board and an applicant to say, listen, you didn't spell it out, so now you can't deny me the special permit.
That's not the way special permits work.
It kind of is.
No, we can turn down any special permit for any reason. It doesn't have to be logical.
But we don't want the town going through appeals and through all of that process. So I think, you know, if at the beginning we can be clear in the bylaws, in our intent, in what we want to do, that would solve a lot of problems.
I think you'd just be making it impossible to do senior housing the way we made it impossible to do ADUs in this town.
I don't agree with that.
So we have a difference of opinion about what the effectiveness of special permit and the need to specify, you know, sort of a difference. How, let's hear from other people. Laura.
I'm just sort of listening and to the 2 sides, and I'm wondering if there's a way to, for the sake of clarity, keep the regulations in one section that addresses senior housing of any type, so that we aren't sort of shifting back before the 2. And then perhaps expanding or clarifying the definitions for both, for what is senior housing and what is a senior housing facility. And then, maybe in that same regulation addressing the kind of needs for both of those. I'm not sure yet where I stand on the, the district question. But I hear what Mary's saying in terms of, can we make the definitions clear for people so that you don't have to get to the point of the special permit and try to figure it out in that process. And we also want to make senior housing possible to do and good senior housing that goes through a thorough site plan review. So right now we're asking for, not site plan, but special permit. We're asking for a special permit for every senior housing
Yes.
that comes before us. So if every senior housing is going to go through special permit, that seems like a good thing. And then, do we need maybe some more definitions of what the two types of senior housing might be, one of those criteria? Maybe we just have to establish that.
I did pull what is a special permit just in general. And thought it would be useful and to add to the slideshow. So in 12.5, this is the new 12.5?
Yeah.
Okay. The permits are granted only on determination that the adverse effects do not outweigh its potential benefits. And here are the things that we specify need to be considered. Which seemed to me to be a pretty good list and would include, the scale of the maybe current and future staffing, the loading and unloading and deliveries, the dumpsters, the character, the noise, the impact on flooding. And then section 6.3, which is referenced in 12, is sort of a similar list. So just to remind people what is listed in those sections for special permit. Okay, let's share.
We have definitions currently in our
We do.
use table for both of those.
Yes.
In the section.
We refer to the Mass General laws. Well, seems like it should cover it.
You mean for assisted living?
For assisted living and for,
It's in our definition.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all. So senior housing facilities, and then our definition has about 6 definitions.
Well, actually, our definition doesn't match the state definition. Ours says independent assisted living facility, and the state is assisted living residence.
I don't think it matters. We refer to the general laws that describe it.
Well, I think if we just paid someone $55,000 and we spent 4 years, I think our words should match the law if we're gonna quote it afterwards.
It's already been done, so it's
Yeah,
good.
but
We're not gonna amend it at this town meeting for whatever. Other thoughts about this philosophical point, which I think is a at least as I understand it, is do we think that the special permit is sufficient? Do we want to restrict certain types of senior housing to certain districts? And welcome. Any other thoughts?
I actually have a question for Mary. Mary, do you think the concern is about density of these number of units in different residential districts?
I think density is a concern, which definitely came out of the visioning survey for the master plan. People definitely have did not want the town to become more dense in structure. I've got
That's true, is that a true statement?
Yes.
Let's see that.
to give that to you, not making stuff up here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, what was that?
No, nothing, no.
Okay. So I read a fair number of towns' senior housing bylaws, and when I compare to what we're currently proposing, I have to say, I feel that we're falling short. You know, looking at, I think, Chris, you put the PowerPoint together and you listed out Hamilton and Wenham and Rockport and Ipswich. I couldn't find Rockport's, but like Wenham and Ipswich and Hamilton's senior housing bylaws, no, though more so Hamilton in this instance, but also Wenham, you know, specifies like how many acres of land that you need for certain facilities. They put limits on how many they can have in a town, right? Like Hamilton happens to put 100 max units. You know, do I think Manchester's going to turn into all senior housing facilities? No, but I think, you know, we have to think about these things. They put limits on how many can be built a year or how many permitted a year. What were some of the other, you know, that the certain distance between if they're large, right? Like if you've got one that's 50 units and another that's however many, you know, that they're not, you know, for safety protocol, all sorts of reasons, we don't have the space necessarily to have them all clustered together. They define they have a definition for base senior housing density for developable acre. I think that we're missing the mark on a lot of angles, and if we move forward with this, I would like to see it further defined.
So for example, let's say that you wanted to limit density, what would that limit be?
Well, that's what needs to be discussed. I'm not here to say, you know, I mean, I can come up with what I would think and as a starting point, but that's what the board should be discussing, right? Like, you know, how many units per acre seems reasonable?
And so what do you think that number should be?
I don't know yet. I don't know. We haven't discussed it. We haven't done any demographic studies. We haven't done anything.
The demographic studies aren't going to tell you what kind of density to have.
Well, demographic was probably. the one.
So, let's can I just go to your comments about Hamilton, and I think it's very different, you were right, from what we've proposed, with almost a completely opposite at least intent. I think we're trying, by whether we can or not remains to be seen, limit these conversions or new units to modest, which would be sort of more densely, you know, several in a building, or you know, a community of, I don't know, 4, 10, well, you know, some number, and out in the LCD 100, I don't know what it is. Where I think Hamilton's bylaw is intentionally intended to have them scattered throughout the town, and the result has been very large units, I think. I don't know if that was their intent, or as just what the market bears, but I think I thought our intent was to try to go away from exactly that.
I don't think Hamilton has all that much, because they have that 50 unit proposal off of Chabaco Road. And the problem, and they do limit for 2 bedrooms. And one of the issues they have is, and that we'll have as well, is that this isn't, you know, those units are probably going to be sold for $1 million each, right? So it's not small A affordable by any means. But that one, I think is 50 units, I might be wrong. But their town max is 100. So they don't have a lot of senior housing. And I'm not saying we should limit to 100. It could be some other number, but I'm just saying that we haven't really discussed any of these
ideas.
Laura or Sue or Christina? Laura has.
Couple of things that I'm hearing about, you know, wanting to make sure we don't cluster, and I don't mean to put words in your mouth, Mary, it's just the way I'm hearing things, and that we're, I guess, so some of my concerns, just to put it that way, are tamping down to the, you know, size or limiting a number that the unintended consequences of that might be more sprawl, more paving, more distributed, you know, covering more land area so that in fact we are having a larger environmental impact. And so I don't think in any cases where, you know, we're not talking about high-rise buildings or even 5-story buildings or something. There is a scale that is already governed by the district that I think is going to keep things fairly modest in scale and contextual. So I would not want to see us place caps or place limits on things that might lead to those unintended consequences of sprawl for being one, and also for price pressure. I mean, if you say we can have 100 units in town and that's it, well, then that might contribute to a unit selling for $1 million, because it is there's a market, you know, condition in Massachusetts where there just simply isn't enough housing for people. And if senior housing is one of the goals of our master plan, then I would just hate to artificially cap it so that only wealthy people can afford even modest sized units because there are so few available. I don't know what the right number is either, but I want to make sure that we don't have that unintended consequence.
I just don't think that's how, you know, the demand market works. Like building more housing isn't gonna necessarily decrease the price, right? It's just gonna keep more $1 million prices.
I disagree with that, but okay.
I think that's just how our government and our society builds, right? So Manchester prices are expensive because Manchester is desirable. You build more houses, it's not gonna get less expensive. It's just gonna keep up with the market demand. So I think the idea of capping it and thinking that it's going to increase the prices, I think is not warranted. I do think that there are differences in senior housing. Some are commercial, whether you want to name them as nonprofit, for profit, those are commercial businesses. And I don't believe that those belong in every neighborhood. I do think we need to district these out and maybe put the density that are higher in the more commercial areas. Maybe there's an overlay. I don't know. Same thing as MBTA. I think we might need to look at where these could be. Repurposing existing buildings, I think could be a whole nother section in this senior bylaw. So I just don't think that we've really thought through this and where some of this could happen. I mean, these are people's complaints from a year ago. Show me an example, show me a lot, show me what it looks like in my neighborhood. We can't give the people this information. We just say, hey, we don't want to limit it, but all right, show me what this is going to look like in my neighborhood if this goes through. And today we can't do that.
Hey, I just respond to just a couple of pieces there. I'm reading about housing prices in Massachusetts and other places being at least partly a factor of the lack of housing, not related to senior necessarily, but you know, overall. So that's where I'm taking the idea that there is some market correlation with the amount of housing available and the cost of the housing. That was one. I don't disagree with, you know, maybe we need to define things by different districts. I just think that we're not well served by placing caps on, you know, sort of artificially limiting caps. We should define what the criteria are for the setback and all the other zoning criteria and let that limit the scale of development to what's appropriate.
We just had our, and we should be able to perceive like how much senior housing we need. I mean, I think we should be able to say how much we want. So if there's a cap on it and if that's the number that we think is reasonable for Manchester, I don't
Well, the
see.
census says that if whatever it is, 22% of the people are over of the residents in Manchester are over 65. So the only day, you know, I'm not sure we're looking to have 22% of the housing units be deeded as senior housing, but that's a fairly given that we have no deeded housing, senior housing units at this moment, it seems to me that there's a gap. And, or no zoning that promotes a move to try to do conversions or to provide a pathway for some senior housing. Seems to me that we're probably away from the max, given that we're at somewhere close to zero. Maybe there are some houses that have voluntarily deeded themselves, but anyway. Okay, I have a couple ways to think about how we move forward. Sue, do you have some comments?
Just general comments, really. I agree with everything that Laura said. And I thought when I read this, that this fit the bill pretty well. And I'm always hesitant to try and drill down too much with something. And a cap would be an example of that, or just defining and defining and defining, because every time you do that, you exclude rather than include. And it seems that we have the power to exclude or include based on the way this is currently written. I think we needed to be somewhat subjective for the board to be making these determinations rather than try and predict every situation that might arise. I think this addresses the situations that we can think of today. And I think it's hard. It would be really nice if we could give everybody an example of here's how this particular zoning bylaw will affect your neighborhood. I think that's impossible because we don't know what people are going to bring to us and what will be suggested. And I feel like this does that. I would like to have the opportunity to go through it with the town council comments, just to make sure that we're not walking into something that, you know, we don't want to waste our time. We want to make sure we have all of those issues that were flagged addressed. But beyond that, I thought that this bylaw as written was, I thought it was pretty good.
Have you looked at other communities and compared them?
I looked at a few others online, but I'm certainly not an expert.
Ron, do you have other comments?
Well, just what everyone is saying, I just think we need senior housing as you said, the population here is aging, and the alternative is to move out of Manchester because your taxes are going up and your upkeep on your house is going up and you have to leave. I've had people that I know have done that.
So to be clear, I'm not against senior housing. I do still think that we could do a lot better. And to Susan's point, we could easily give examples if we know the regulations of a district and we can say, oh, that this is the max size that could be built there. We could definitely do scenarios. So it's not a throw spaghetti at the wall and because we don't know, we could definitely provide some true case scenarios so residents could understand.
I think the danger I have with scenarios is then it goes into a spiral of the sort of what people view as the worst case scenario that the planning board is going to let go through it. So scenarios is that I worry
Well,
about that.
I'm just going to the point that, you know, we're still not really providing much to residents to say, we've done our due diligence and we've, you know, discussed and thought and hashed out and did some analysis and for the various different districts and how much open space we get or how much, you know, there's definitely not an affordable piece to this. I'd like to see a true affordable piece to this. It's not in there. So I just don't think we've done our job.
So I have a couple of, this reminds me a little bit of the conversation about prescriptive versus performance-based standards. So you're trying to be prescriptive and describe exactly what we would allow here. And I think that, for example, density is going to be a certain density, certain setbacks, certain services can be provided in certain districts. And I think when you're that prescriptive, it causes problems down the road in terms of enough flexibility to generate what we're really interested in, which is the performance of these things. We want them to perform well, not just comply with a specific set of regulations. However, there is one point you brought up here, which I absolutely agree with, which is the historic part of this. I think there should be a historic district procedures and regulations generally, which the senior housing would fit under. And I'm not sure we can do that in the Springtown meeting, but I think that's an important thing that we should somehow work toward.
So let's go a step back for a minute and ask the sort of procedural question. We have a public hearing on Monday. Do we want to advance a senior housing bylaw to the public hearing? Because if the answer to that is no, then we can work on these other details. So let's take it just a show of hands about whether we want to try to get a senior housing bylaw to the table on Monday. Because, it's not a good use of time if the answer to that is no.
That's true.
Are we voting to bring A or this?
That's a general, the goal is at least try tonight to resolve some things to get a senior housing bylaw to the table. Or do we think, given the issues that have been discussed, that we need more time? So just a straw.
What about the comments from town council?
Well, then I have some specific, I have some specific suggestions about how we might resolve those. So you want me to work through
Is
those
that what,
first?
but is
Among
about advancing a different copy than what we have now?
Yeah, well, I'll go through what I think are the big issues. But I think we could, if we wanted to advance a senior housing bylaw, it seems to me we can vote up or down upper limit for facilities that are over X units must be in the, are limited to the LCD. That's one idea. Whatever that X is, 25 was what I wrote down, but it could be anything. I think we can remove the height. The town council basically said remove you're not the special permit granting authority for height, so remove that. I think Mary makes some good points about open space. So I would say maybe 20% at least 20% greater than the minimum in the district. As a suggestion, that we maybe at this point delete the historic stuff, because it sounds like there was a lot of comments about that and that we talk with town council about the size, given that it's not single, that we maybe add in for multi-unit facilities, then we add the size restrictions. So it seems to me that those things are all achievable, and that that we can get that together. Now, none of us have read the town council's comments in great detail, so that would be a caveat. So that's my proposal. Yeah.
If I could comment on the open space without knowing, would wanting to look more closely at what that open space changes that you're proposing to make. If we say that there's a minimum size, we should just think together about what that minimum size means, because we don't want to, on the one hand, preclude the building of senior housing, but we also don't want to discount the value of open spaces, even smaller open spaces, when they are preserving habitat, protecting, mature trees on the site. There are many ecological functions that these spaces can provide, even if it's not 20%. And so I'm always in favor of open space, but I just want to make sure.
Well, I guess I was reflecting on the fact that in the LCD, we have an 80% requirement. If in the water protection district, we already have not open space requirements, but impervious requirements. So the open space probably does need some additional definition, or we leave it to the special permit and say the special permit shall specifically maximize open space and make it available to
residents. or
Yeah,
something
this
like
might
that.
be a case of where we want the performance, so, you know, it's accessible to residents or whatever the right word is for that, and it has, you know, it provides value as overseen by the planning board, so that's a performance, you know, we care
Mhm.
about maybe preserving trees or preserving natural features, providing access, making it useful.
Right, and then performance would allow us to discount the open space, which is a septic field or. the-
Should not be a septic
Yeah,
field, totally agree with
Right,
that.
and that which is.
Should not be roads
roads
and
driveways.
utilities and
Yeah,
so
so we
forth.
could say open space, that, you know, not including septic.
But we've
and-
got that, I think we've got that language in other
Yeah.
parts of the zoning.
Yes.
Just don't want to make it so big that it precludes the.
So without getting into going through my list of issues, which I've been taking notes on what the people's issues have been. I guess I come back to the larger question tonight. Do we want to try to work through those 6 or so issues in order to get a bylaw to the public hearing? Or do we want to pass over this topic for the public hearing?
Sarah, can I ask, did the town council bring up the nonconformity issue?
That was good.
Yes,
What they say?
they said it's the same thing you did essentially.
No, we just got it. I haven't even had a chance to forward it. It just came.
Or
We will forward it to you.
everybody.
Did it?
I think so.
Betsy,
I don't know.
Betsy, do you have it? Can you forward it to everybody while we're here? I can't. I don't know if I don't know who it came to.
Yeah, I just got it late this afternoon and I will put it on SharePoint.
Great, thanks. Oh, I just opened it at 6:20. So I don't.
Let's see.
That's fine. I mean, if it comes on the day of the meeting, it's difficult to find the time. in
Yeah,
any
I
case.
just feel like it seems to be sent to some planning board members, but not all.
Well, so
I
we'll get
didn't
it.
get
We'll all get it,
We got
right?
it.
Yeah.
But the answer to your question, Mary, is that yes, they did raise it as an issue then. Which is it, the Board of Appeals or is it the planning board?
So that needs to be.
Or non-conforming.
So if we take that whole part out of the. We can just not include it in the in this senior housing thing because it wasn't in it before.
In terms of process, would it make sense if we all decide to advance this, go through the council's remarks first, clean that up? That might just strike some of the parts that we're debating. Or clean them up, whatever we need to do to follow the council's.
I have another
Review?
suggestion
Okay.
on that,
All
but
right.
So I think Mary's question was, maybe I'm wrong, if the property was non-conforming, I don't think it had to do with historic.
No,
No, 2 different things.
Right.
two different things.
It's conversion.
Yeah, no,
Right.
in this proposed bylaw, it's saying that the planning board with a special permit can increase a nonconformity, which
Normally,
And doesn't
we-
council
we
make
don't have
a,
that authority.
make a point about that anyhow?
Well, I guess we'd have it if
I don't know, I didn't read it.
we'd probably
Right.
have it if the bylaw got approved, but. It does raise an issue about who's responsible for regulating nonconformities.
Right. Right,
So council addressing
I think
that,
it's
maybe that's where we
legitimate.
start.
And this goes back to, I do think that we have zoning districts for a reason, and I don't think that every one of these projects is probably suitable for every neighborhood, and not defining that, I think is concerning.
I think I agree with the first part of your statement, is that these projects do not,
Yeah,
not every
I
project
think we all agree to
fit,
that.
fit on every lot, for sure. And that, but so too, we have, you know, in District D, 70% of the parcels in District D are smaller have smaller lot size than District D lot size requirements. So we have many,
but those
Site.
were mostly done and then zoning came in, so.
right, for
you
many
know,
reasons,
Yeah,
but
so
for
I
many
think we're
reasons.
mixing apples and oranges.
So let me go, so given the sort of set of issues, do we want to try to power through those? I guess to Laura's point, my proposal, I'll give you my proposal, is that we talk through them all if we were to advance this to Monday. That we talk through them all and get consensus on intent, and that one person, so we don't have to post a meeting. Maybe Chris, because he's thought about it, and Betsy. I've been thinking about my own schedule Monday. Here's my proposal would be that they take that intent, put it into another draft, and that we would take that up on Monday night, maybe even starting a half an hour earlier to talk through it. So, just a thought.
So are we gonna be voting on Monday night to approve these things for warrant? Is that what's gonna happen?
On Monday night, what?
That's the intent.
Yeah, the intent is that we have to approve the advancing it to the warrant, but we just need to advance it to the warrant. And then the section, remember, the warrant isn't the whole detailed language. The motion is the detailed language. So we have a little bit of time, but if there are any changes to the specificity of the warrant. So for example, if all the senior housing had to be painted blue, you would want to have that in the warrant so that town voters could anticipate that.
So could we treat the general counsel or the town council's comments as if they were public comments at the public hearing? And
Essentially,
yeah, I think.
well, I think we can do better than that.
Well, yeah, but
Yeah,
And we clean it up as best we can
Yeah.
for,
right.
and then maybe the outstanding one.
and then I guess if after that, we can't come to an agreement, then we just take it off. I mean, that's not,
Where we can still decide to pull it.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I'm hearing that so let me get a show of hands. Who would like to see us move this forward to the public hearing?
I like to try it. Yeah.
Well, again, I'm not clear on this,
Yeah.
this or a
Right.
very revised
A
one.
revised version, not this exact version. I think everybody recognizes that this exact version needs
So did
someone.
we vote if we're gonna separate this into two, or did
Well,
we already decide that?
Why don't we take these issues now that at least the ones that I've identified, at least and sort of work through them. And maybe we can, the first one, so it sounds like we have at least 5 and I'm clear about what, okay, 5.5. Okay. Thank you. So the first issue, the first issue that Mary suggested was that we split it into 2 bylaws, or that we split it into 2 types of uses and specify which district. I guess my first cut at that was to say housing units of greater than X number of units shall be restricted to the LCD as a first cut at that. Again,
Can we put together like the use table, this district in school?
What Hamilton looks like, and that's what, I mean, we've been talking about Hamilton for a long time, and we just never seem to adopt some of the, I think the good practices. They incorporate the open space, they incorporate the subdivision. I just don't think that we put the time into this one. I think we gotta just throw it together.
I think we put a lot of time
No,
into it. So
that's-
something
that
to
happens.
anyway, okay, so
We put a lot of time into this.
So, the question is yeah, go ahead.
What's the benefit of having 2 sections as opposed to defining the criteria and putting it in one? Is there a benefit to 2 sections in particular?
From my viewpoint, and this was a discussion on February 9th, that though the building code, the Massachusetts State Building Code lists assisted living as residential, just like they list hotels as residential, it's clearly a commercial use. And so I think when we start changing what's allowed in zoning districts, it's a tougher sell than if we try to keep business commercial in the business commercial districts, whether that be the limited commercial district, perhaps the general district, worth a discussion. I think when we start putting commercial uses into residential district, people get concerned, residents get concerned.
So-
That's my feedback.
So what do you think about doctors' offices and daycare centers and There are all kinds of commercial uses that are.
So
allowed.
daycare centers, we don't have control over that, and doctor's offices are smaller scale. You know, it's not,
They're commercial uses.
yeah,
Is there a senior
Or
housing
accessory use.
ownership? Let's keep our discussion to the senior housing. Is there a senior housing, not ownership or,
You mean the profit, nonprofit?
no, I'm thinking, I don't know, I can't figure out. I mean, I guess in my own head, I think of a 4-unit. You know, 4 65 plus people living together who age together, like in a co-op. And then as they age, people, they need a caregiver who comes, and a lawnmower person and that kind of thing.
that's what.
But I don't know, but, and then, so how is that different if they live in a co-op? Or they each own a unit in this facility, than if, you know, Sarah Inc. owns the facility and rents to the 4 of you. How is that different?
Well, and again, I'm no expert on this, but from my reading, the business commercial end of it comes in when you get these, what do we call them, like the accessory uses, or the facility uses, right? When you have a cafeteria, when you have a barber shop, when you have, you know, physical therapy, you know, that's the facility part, right? Like, if you're just 4 units and people living there, that's a 4-unit building, right? Like, that's,
But if you're giving them services, now you're, under your definition, you're turning it into a commercial use.
well, I guess it depends how, if it's a, you know, again, then you would get into if it's a profit, nonprofit. I don't know, I'm no expert in this area by any means. So, but I'm just saying what, you know, reading this, comparing, researching what I've come up.
So I think you have to think of this as from the point of view of the people who are gonna be living there. And these are seniors who probably lived in Manchester their entire lives and are faced with the alternative of going to Danvers to live, or staying in some kind of a building in Manchester where they can get services.
Yes, and I, you know, again, and that's a lovely scenario. I would love to see that, right? And I'm not anti that at all. I mean, but you don't build something and say, okay, it's only Manchester people moving in there, right?
No,
So,
that's true.
you know, it's a nice scenario, but it's not real world, so.
But
just-
I hope we'll never make it possible to zone for only people who currently live in Manchester to be living in Manchester. Because I for one would be here and people.
But that, I mean, you
as
know,
well.
talking as if, you know, we're solving a Manchester problem and we're moving the Manchester people.
Yeah, it's not, none of this is exclusively for people who are already living here.
Okay, so what about the proposal, if we want to try, if we were to set a upper limit of numbers of units in a single facility, and that anything above that is restricted to the LCD.
And possibly the general district.
And possibly this District D.
Possibly
why-
District D.
That's the problem is,
But I mean,
So I think the services, the part is the crux of this, right? If you're gonna take a unit and convert it into 6 units for independent senior housing, to me, that's fine. If you're then going to take that 6 units and then convert it to assisted living, which requires services, that's where the extra cars, the extra vehicles, those are the levels, I think that those are not conducive to maybe all neighborhoods. That's, I mean, independent living, senior independent living conversions, I think that's a fantastic idea. Independent conversions to assisted living in every neighborhood, I'm not sure.
so
The town-
so which neighborhoods would you restrict them to? Which districts?
I don't know. I mean, I think you're
Well, that-
talking about a commercial just use.
I think that's the problem. We don't know. And we're not gonna know because we don't know until someone presents a proposal to us and we can say, yeah, this is gonna work great in this neighborhood, or we can say, no, I'm sorry, that's 20 units is too big for this particular site.
I'm not talking about 20 units, though. I'm talking about conversions of existing things. And I think that's really where some of these things might happen.
Sure.
So what we do have in the draft is at the sole discretion of the planning board during the special permit application. The operator of a senior housing facility may also be permitted to provide optional services on the site for convenience of the residents, including but not limited to transportation, blah, blah, blah. Do we want to say a minimum lot size for those, I don't know, I mean, is there some, it seems to me that we've kind of said, in order to have those, it has to, we've added in at the sole discretion of the planning board, particularly for those accessory services. That was and it seems to me that if you have something in the general district, the beauty of it is that the residents can participate in the barbershop services and the
And
walk
they can walk to
to
town.
those things,
Yeah.
use the train, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So,
That's why, so why not have if we're calling that a commercial use, why not have that in the LCD in the general district? Rather than limiting it to the LCD only, part of the idea is,
right.
you don't have a car anymore, you'd like to walk.
Mhm.
Some people might like to go everywhere by shuttle, some
Right.
people might like to walk.
And let's say you wanted
There's
to,
probably a market for both.
so I guess I feel I'm changing my thought. So I guess the larger goes back to the question of whether we have confidence in the special permit process to appropriately regulate the allowed uses.
I would say if the sticking point is a district question,
Mhm.
then if there's agreement about that, then let's solve it in the district. Rather than try to limit the lot size or try to limit the height or the
Right.
density or something like that. That would be my inclination. Because I worry that the outcome will be not what we, not what some of us wanted to see for the character of a neighborhood.
I think that statement is probably true, but the character of the neighborhood is a
Sure.
objective.
Sure it is, I don't.
So are we
Yeah.
gonna say that you're not allowed to have services in a facility, in a senior housing property in District D? Is that what it ended up saying?
So I think the definition of the difference in independent housing, it's a convenience. Those are the two large language difference. Assisted, it's not a convenience, it's required. So I think that's, to me, is the big crux of this, whether.
I would say maybe another way to look at it maybe is once you move into nursing care. That is, that requires on-site nursing, different level of care. People are not living independently anymore, and maybe, that could be a way we could define it.
But I think that is the definition.
Well, we already allow nursing facilities, albeit charitable, that's what they're allowed everywhere.
So I think today's language is assisted living, that's the equivalent of nursing home.
Oh, no,
No, they're actually different.
they're very different.
Well, I don't mean nursing home, I mean nursing
Care versus
Care.
assisted living are different.
versus assisted living, different stages of life.
So I think we need to probably take a vote on whether or not we want to make a specified use by district, I guess is what you're suggesting, right? Or whether we want to leave it to the oversight of the special permit process, which is what we currently have proposed.
Mhm,
I think we have a difference of opinion
mhm.
on that, and unless there's a specific
Can I ask a
Yeah.
question?
Yeah.
In terms of what nursing we're already allowing in all districts, what is that? in
charitable
reference to?
nursing homes.
So that's charitable nonprofit. So if we
Sure,
want to keep
nursing
it
homes, right? But
as like we term it convalescent care, things like that. Nursing, there could be even a hospital there, but it's.
so what's limiting one of those from being too big in any district?
The only thing
Concession.
limiting it is that it's a charitable nonprofit, and so a developer is probably not gonna come in and do that.
My mother lives in a very large, not very large, in, you know,
That was my father.
second, 2 stories in the woods,
Yeah, there's no.
very nice scale, but it's
there's no-
non-profit.
Performance wise, there's no.
Number of units, it's, yeah.
There is, because my parents are in a, in, I guess, the quite for profit, so it's,
They look
So-
the same as a nonprofit. just
That-
like-
They
I'm
certainly
not
can.
saying they look any different, I'm just saying the business structure is a
model is
lot
different.
Well,
different.
that's, but
Yes.
then we're not
But-
regulating business structure.
I'm not sure we could.
Right,
No,
so
I
I,
wouldn't want to.
so that's why I'm trying to understand how this is different from what we're allowing already in these nonprofit.
I think it's if,
structures.
who's, it's the drive of who's gonna come in and develop, right? So if it's a charitable nonprofit, you're gonna get just certain business sectors that are gonna come in and want to build. And is it profitable for them to come into Manchester or not? It's just, it's
I-
demographics and,
I agree with that one,
Thing.
Mary, yeah, because I think there are for-profits that are existing for senior housing development to meet a need, but are not in the business necessarily making money, but they might build a facility at the same size and scale. as a
so I think if it is the same, then we should keep the same language that we have to less confuse people then. We keep the same language that we had.
What is that language?
That it's for, I don't know, I'd have to look it up. It's for the convalescent, charitable or philanthropic use. Nursing care facility, sanitarium.
Sounds a little outdated.
Yeah. Well, we can do charitable or philanthropic use, nursing care, facility, assisted living.
Yeah, you
I feel
might
like
get
what
the
we're,
same.
yeah, what we're
development
missing,
different,
what
yeah.
this bylaw is giving us, at least from where I sit, is the ability to take my house,
Mhm.
your house, any,
Mhm.
what, and come before the planning board with a plan for changing it to, you know, 4 studios or whatever, you know, I can fit in my house, and provide it for, you know, 4 couples who are gonna live as a co-op
Mhm.
and share meals and helper, you know, with an apartment for an accessory unit for employee housing
You got this
or
all
whatever
figured
it
out,
is.
huh?
Chapters, but you know, whatever. To me, that would be a huge step forward if we could encourage, allow with oversight, a few of those to happen. And
So just have a house like deeded for senior housing.
Mhm. With the,
That makes sense.
to me, that's what we're missing. And that this bylaw I see allowing
Right.
and in a way that, you know, a 4-unit house is 4 units is not allowed in the district I live in, right? Not in any district. So to me, with oversight, you know, if I had enough parking and enough could make it accessible, and you know, my house doesn't have an elevator, but it would have to have you know, those kinds of things would have to be part of the plan. And you think about the amount of investment that you would need to do that, you'd have to be quite serious about wanting to do that. Or maybe even you would have one owner, and then that owner would rent the units to somebody, but still, the outcome is still the same, whether they're owned as a co-op or whether some commercial entity owns it, the outcome would be the same, and that it would create long-term smaller units that could be shared by a community of people over 65.
So are you talking independent use room, like units or renting a room?
I don't think the ownership model matters, I guess is my
Well, my
point.
question is, we have a boarding house bylaw, so that to me almost meets that need.
No, but 4 studios are not allowed in my district. for 1 bedroom or 2 bedroom apartments.
Well, that's what, I mean, to me, the difference is independent living or assisted living, and I think there is a difference, and I do. Would like to get those in 2 different places. For
But
studios,
you can't say which places, that's the problem. I can't say which places.
I think the independent could go anywhere, and I think the assisted needs to go in the general district and the LCD.
Well, what about a 4-unit assisted living in residence district C? Why couldn't you do that?
Because I think the level of care and the services are greater, that may not be conducive for a single family
If
neighborhood.
it's not conducive, we won't agree to a special permit.
Well, I think people have a right to understand what could be built in their neighborhood. I mean, that's a tenet of zoning, is it not?
Yeah, sure, so they'll know, it could be a 4-unit. assisted
we don't
living
say that.
facility.
But this is the
Well,
point,
again,
we
because
don't say this.
because we're not trying to not be prescriptive.
Well, I think you're gonna get pushback on this.
Well,
and I
I'm
think-
sure we will, I mean, that's clear, we're getting it already. Yeah.
Okay, I'd like to just at least take a, so. Yes, or let's, somebody suggest whether we want to break any, restrictions by, district. Or do we want to allow the special permit to prevail? So let's say, without being specific, would we like to add specific, district-specific housing, senior housing types, regardless of what they are, just as a matter, because I think it's a process question is really the difference, right? Then we can, if that prevails, then we'll figure out which ones go in which district, but if there's not agreement that we want to do it that way, then we should move on.
Okay,
So I'm gonna guess that Chris wants to say, well, let's not do that.
Yeah.
And just stick with the special permit.
yes,
Okay, so that's a motion.
so moved.
Okay, and does somebody want to second that?
What was the motion?
The motion is that we would not create district
Requirements for,
requirements.
specific district requirements for
Right.
senior housing.
Right. That we would, so, I'll second that. Okay, and then, so a yes vote is to leave it the way it is, where it's relying on the special permit alone. And, with the exception that we currently have, the requirement that the LCD be only large, facilities with amenities. And a no vote means that we would then work through what types of facilities belong in which district, because I think it's a philosophical difference rather than,
Yeah,
So we're already saying, just to clarify here, the LCD is the only place where you can have large.
no, we're
projects.
saying that if you build in the LCD, you have to have the larger.
Large project
Large
review.
project. No, you have to have the.
you can actually be more specific and say you can't build independent housing alone in the
Yes,
LCD.
I see.
It has to be part of a facility. It has to
Okay.
be a level.
But it could be house, I mean, I don't think we say it can't be townhouses. or
Correct.
things like
No,
that.
okay.
It could be single family,
It could be,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Ones
which
are
is
built-
kind of, again, mixing
It
in
is.
residential and commercial, but.
Yeah.
Um,
So let's just, so is everybody clear about what we're voting on? So it's, essentially leave it the way it is, would be a yes vote. A no vote would be, and we hash through each district and what kinds of things go in there. Because I think it's 2 different philosophies. So, all in, those in favor of Chris's motion, raise your hand. Got 4, and then, would like to district by district, raise your hand. And 1 abstaining. Okay, one abstention for Gail. Okay, thank you. So let's not try to hash through tonight anyway. And let's hear what the public hearing has to say.
Mhm.
We might hear something helpful at the public hearing. Okay, what about the
So I have a procedural question, I'm sorry,
yeah,
but
go ahead.
I'm still a novice at all this. So when will we be able to review what our final proposal
Yeah.
that will be putting before the public hearing?
We need to figure that out.
It's a good question.
It is a good question.
The weekend.
Yeah, my proposal was that we take the input from the resolution of these issues. And that ask Betsy and someone, Chris or
Yeah,
you or
that's an
me,
idea.
to work through that and then present it before the public hearing. Meet half an hour earlier to sort of talk through it was what I was thinking. But
And I think
that's a
we-
proposal. That's
And I
a-
think we'd present the town council's comments as part of the comment process in
Yeah.
public hearing.
And then we have to decide it going to the warrant, and then we have to finalize a motion for the warrant, which can be a little bit after the warrant is finalized. The
And
warrant
that
is
can
the
be
notice to
That can be after Monday.
Yes,
Okay, got it.
Yeah,
Got it.
final, yes,
Thank
final
you.
motion to be after Monday.
I would hope you could incorporate some of the town council.
Yes, I think
Benign
so.
comments
Yeah.
and leave,
leave
so we
it,
don't have a million of them.
right.
Okay,
So
I'm
I
gonna
think
couple
it's
of,
important too. I mean, residents don't have a copy then to review beforehand. So
We'll try to post something on the town website before.
yeah, I mean, I don't even know if has it been posted this version?
No, not yet.
well, no, I don't think that's true. I think it is there.
Is it?
I had asked Tiffany to post it. I don't know what its status is. I asked her a week and a half ago.
So I think I have to go through the whole bylaw at the
I think you're right.
hearing because we're not really, we're right back where, this is like Groundhog Day with the last town meeting, so we haven't really.
Let me go through a couple other things. I would like to propose that we remove the discussion about the height variance or variance is a word,
Special permit grant.
special permit, that we'll just use the height and setbacks for the district.
Agreed, and also take out the nonconformity.
Yeah. Any objections to that? So remove height and nonconformity. And can I suggest that we use the setbacks that are specific to the district? That may be increased by special permit.
Maybe increase.
Increased.
Sure. We can always do that.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, we take Laura's suggestions that we may, that we specifically may require, open space in excess of the district requirements. And,
20%.
I would say not 20%.
Yeah.
Leave that at the planning board's
Yeah.
discretion.
but we specifically call it out as a specific things. In addition to that in the district or the overlay district.
Yes.
To your-
So I think we have a definition for open space, so that doesn't really then become, I mean, it could be 0. So we're not, I don't know why we would have a section in this bylaw that's open space if.
Did we,
That's why the Hamilton one marries the two and it references back and says how they should go in tandem together. I just
references back to a different section on open
references
space?
back to the open space
Definition.
bylaw
Definition, open
section.
space bylaw.
But I don't think we have.
We don't have
an open space bylaw.
Well, Where we, yes, our requirements. I mean, we just can't have a new section. I mean,
I'm just saying, if we're not going to potentially require open space, why would we have this in this bylaw?
Yeah, I think we should require it. I guess I was just not wanting to settle on a number like 20% without, I don't have the context in front of me. So,
So I can give you.
Right now,
context.
we say that it's 20% of the lot or more,
okay.
but the point being, to Mary's point, in the LCD, open space requirements are 80%, so
Right,
it shouldn't be
less than the other
district. We could say 20% or the district requirement, whichever is greater.
yeah,
Yeah. So therefore, if district, you know,
we don't, we just so we don't have them.
Just use, yeah, I mean, Which, that just gets back to what the district requirements are.
No,
not
it said 20% or the district minimum.
Or the
Which
district
districts don't we need more than 20?
LCD.
I mean, that we,
The other districts don't have any open space requirement in them now, right?
Unless they're in the
this
water.
goes back to impervious pervious.
No,
That's different than open space.
So I think what they're referencing is maybe something like the cluster development, they use different language. So if that eventually passes, that's where these two bylaws would merge. So wherever.
Well, it's in there now, actually. There is cluster development allowed and there's a definition of open space, so we could refer to it.
Yeah,
yeah, that might work.
So what's that wording, Sarah?
I said 20% of the lot area or the open space requirements in the district, whichever is greater.
There isn't one.
but we don't have one.
For the district, there isn't. But we
Well,
could-
for LCD, we do,
But
maybe.
right, so that would just mean that for the LCD. It also means that in the future. So if you think in the future, if there were additional open space requirements in a district. For some other reason, or an overlay district
Right.
for
Like
flood
pizza,
protection. Or then. It kind of future proofs it as opposed to
Should we take the open space definition of clustered in clusters and copy and put it into here too?
What is it?
Uh,
Do we remember? I don't know. Well, so that's a
yeah,
point. you
so
can
why
look
don't,
at.
I think that that's something that maybe there could be option A and option B.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. RCC definition, okay. Can I suggest that we delete the historic significance section for the moment, because,
Can we still talk about
Oh,
open space?
sure.
Are you including the other stuff? I mean. For the open space so that it's contiguous open space, it's accessible, it's not used for septic. Only
Sure.
a certain percentage could be used for.
That would also be what's currently in the RCC, I think,
Yeah, I think it has to.
same requirements. I don't,
Residential cluster.
Yeah, but we don't.
we
that's
do
not-
have one.
We have
It's
it.
the old one.
okay, Betsy?
So the main reason that I wanted to see something in there is that there's a lot of big old houses on the market right now. And if somebody decided to use one of those houses for this purpose, then without having some kind of language in there to protect those buildings, somebody could come in and level it and build what they want to build. And my concern is that it's changing the whole context of the neighborhood. It's destroying a potentially significant building. And that's why I felt it should be in there, or something to that effect.
About the
We're talking
existing
about
building.
historic, not.
Oh,
open
around
space,
historic.
obviously. Yeah,
Well, I don't think we can prevent someone from tearing something
Yeah.
down in a building,
I mean, that can happen. If I buy a
anything.
old,
It happens all the time. It happens every day.
but does it
Yeah, I'm
happen
kind of
if
stunned that Manchester doesn't have any demolition delay or anything.
We talked about that early on in this process and people voted against it.
Okay,
Well, it seems that what might be different here is the fact that it's going through special permit review. So ordinarily you couldn't knock down, I mean, you could knock down any structure.
You could knock it down and then come in for a special permit.
You could, and there are always loopholes. And we're, gradually trying to work out the mix, but I do take Betsy's point on that.
but historic significance is a term without definition.
it's
is-
right there in the language that I proposed, which is if it's eligible for the state or national register.
Does it need to be anything else besides 50 years old to be eligible?
I didn't get into age.
No, that is
But that's the
right here.
definition of eligible for the register.
Well, we also have a district in town, neither of those criteria. Historic district.
I don't know how much.
So
historic
historically
district is
significant is 50 years old.
eligible for the National Register or for a
So
state
that-
or national register.
That's gonna
The
be,
first criteria is you gotta be at least 50 years old. Doesn't say it's a great piece of architecture. It
right,
says
that's what I'm
it's 50 years
saying,
old.
so like, it could be, any house, but that could be 90% of the properties, right, and some of them are not very historically.
That's why you usually go through the historic inventory to figure out what is significant
Yeah,
and or contributing or, the different thresholds of historic.
but that's not
But
defined in here.
But the definition of what is eligible, in my recollection, is 50 years old.
So,
And then you determine from there.
so this might be something in the special permit review criteria that we could put our hats on, that it's.
Well, that's why I was hoping if
Preserving-
there was gonna be anything historic, it's because it's in special permit.
But I think Betsy's making the point that we want to encourage people to use existing buildings if they're
Rather
in
than tear down.
residential,
Yeah.
but
Can we just say that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can just say we encourage blah, 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 but I think if you put a historic significance on it, and we don't define historic significance really.
I think they're just wasting your breath saying that you encourage it. I mean, people are gonna tear it down if they want to. I mean. Unless we have some kind of teeth behind it.
Well, I think we do need a historic bylaw.
No.
yeah, well, that,
Mhm.
I'm just saying the
Not
tear
tonight.
down.
Right after you're done with the flood.
waiting Period.
Tackle that one.
I mean, there just could be, there's so many things that we could do instead of encourage, like a year waiting period. And there doesn't have to be, a lot of.
Well, could we review, I'm sorry, you just got me thinking, if a special permit criteria for this one could be historic, historic nature, that some words that we can use that have more, that have some sort of industry standard, definitions associated with them. So we don't have to say this is a register eligible, but we could say, is historically contributing or something like that. And the planning board could review that. And if we need peer review on a facility and one of the people we hire is, the historic consultant to say, yes, this is a historically contributing building. Seems
okay,
like it
so
would be
maybe we
useful
can
to have
reword
that
the
language.
historic paragraph to reflect. The planning board has can include in addition to the criteria, special permit criteria in section 6.3, the planning board can also include historic.
Actually, we already have it.
In the special permit.
Yeah, under site design, it says archaeological or historical resources, the SPGA may require applicants to submit the proposed development plan to the town's historical commission and or the Mass Historical Commission for review.
Okay, so in that case, we're truly talking historical,
Yeah.
right? Not just some big house that was built 52 years ago.
That's right.
So then what about just having independent or assisted in existing buildings versus new construction?
What's the question?
Like as opposed to
Is the code, oh, I get you, yeah.
What about is
you're
that-
making them as conversions.
Can be converted, it can't be torn down and built new.
Oh, yeah,
In
like we
certain
live in the general,
districts.
this is like free family, it can be a converted, but not new. I like that idea.
I don't understand why that would, what that would do.
Well, it says that
In
you could,
residential districts.
right, you
Yeah.
I can't tear my house down.
And you have to
My-
say, it would be, I'm assuming it would be like the same footprint, right? So the neighbors already know that, okay, this is where the house is, it's got
But
this
that
much.
seems-
open
no,
I
space.
don't think that's the same footprint
Limited.
because you could
Yeah,
tear it down.
you gotta put an elevator in or something. That's gonna
Okay,
come in.
there's also another standard here, aesthetic standards. Location, size, design, building materials, and operating characteristics of the proposed development shall be compatible with and shall not adversely affect the livability and appropriate development of abutting properties with natural and built environment in the area and surrounding neighborhood.
Okay.
Exactly.
Well, of course. It's gonna be.
Well, I think your idea and the abundance idea is gonna be completely different.
Well, that happens.
So if we're here trying to make
But
that
we
not.
can't, you can't legislate that. I don't
Well,
think.
I think if you convert an existing building, I think you're on a path to. I mean, how can you object to something that was already there?
I don't understand why.
So
Why
you're,
is that different from encouraging the use of existing buildings?
Because you're saying that you can't demolish it and build.
Could you add on to it?
No, I'm just throwing out ideas. It came off the top of my head and I
so
thought it
you're
was.
saying, if you convert an existing structure, which we're stands in for a historic structure right now, that would permit the uses of assisted living or nursing, is that what you said? And so are you thinking that that's certain districts or, because I just want to keep playing that, I mean, it might be,
We do have a section
okay,
for this
Use
already,
yeah.
in the draft.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, I gotta
Oh, so it's-
expand.
Conversions of
Sorry.
existing structures.
Screens, it's just not.
Yeah, that's part.
So we do have a section, conversion of existing structures. Applicants are encouraged to convert existing structures no longer needed or suitable for their original use to senior housing facilities, depending which consider if such conversions are compatible with the character of the neighborhood, which take into consideration the interests of the abutters, neighbors, and the public, especially where the site abuts a residential area or buildings, or the buildings merit preservation. When the land and structures are non-conforming, they will take out this non-conforming piece.
Mhm.
So
I think that's
I
good.
think that seems like it's is essentially what we've been just discussing. I don't have a mouse. I can't do this.
And the next one talks about demolition, right?
Betsy, did you forward that email?
She was gonna put it on the SharePoint. she
Excuse
said.
me?
Oh, okay.
Okay,
I was
so
looking for, I thought you were gonna forward the legal and DP laws.
Well, we're not all on our computers anyhow right now, so
Right.
if she does, we can't all be looking at it.
okay, so I think I think we're gonna look at the town council's recommendations about the historic, but probably put that aside. And then
But keep the
but
clause.
keep the clause that talks about encouraging existing use, maybe strengthen that, if possible. And the last issue, I think, that of substance, in my quick read of town council's comments, is this prohibition or restriction on size. And so we will ask them if we can restrict the size when it's a multi-unit, not a single residential structure. I think she said it can't do it in single residential structures.
Well,
So,
she said we might get a comment from the AG's
okay,
office.
well, maybe let's get some clarity on that issue, because we think we had agreed that we wanted to try to keep them
Yeah.
of small size.
agreed.
Wasn't that what we do with accessory dwelling units?
Or the proposed at least.
Right,
It's not a
I
single
agree,
unit.
I had that same thought. Okay, yes, go ahead.
May I, y'all don't shoo me out of the room, could I revisit open space for just a minute? If we
Sure.
do distinguish among districts, then perhaps the general district is one where we don't want to require a 20% open space set aside because it is.
Yeah.
It's not gonna really
Unreasonable.
work, there's not much open space unless we create the open space in the general district.
I'm okay with that.
Could you repeat that?
General district is the exact same as District D, so I think if you limit one, you limit the other.
Okay, so let,
20% would be 1,200 square feet.
and that's that could be quite a burden in those two districts, potentially, if you wanted to have senior housing. Well, so let me just put it out there and we'll use general district and District D, because you're saying that they're both the same. So where we require a 20% open space set aside as a minimum, as a floor. And in the LCD, we have a larger number.
There's still a pervious surface.
That's separate. We're saying that the open space requirement is not required in the general district. And then Mary said, what about District D? Because if the general district is kind of the downtown,
Mhm.
are we trying to do a 20% carve out of open space right in the downtown?
I
Where
think
we
that's
might have
unreasonable.
different,
Yeah.
it seems unreasonable and it also doesn't seem to really benefit the, the historic density of the town.
Can I sort of ask a related question to that, which is, can the open space be counted as part of the pervious area?
I think we said no.
Pervious,
Pervious.
not septic, but pervious,
Pervious,
probably. I
Gravel
don't know
driveway.
why not.
like a gravel.
But we have those clauses in there that say, just like residential conservation clause, you know, can't count the septic, can't
Right,
count, you can
right.
count like 5%, 10%, whatever the gravel driveway is, if you want 2 parking spots for somebody to get to the trailhead or something. So we would still have all those same conditions.
Yeah.
But we wouldn't require the 20% set aside in the general district.
Or
And I don't know. about
yeah.
And then what about, so general district D goes around into the water resource overlay.
The water resource overlay
Would-
district would still apply.
would-
That would still apply.
Yeah.
Any overlays would still apply. So it'd really be an exemption for the general district where there's not an overlay.
I'm fine with that. Why don't we write it up
Okay.
and okay. Okay, I'm happy to write up these notes and I will do it tonight. At least what I think we've agreed, and then,
Get it into the document.
yeah, and then someone, I mean, I'm happy to take a stab at it, but,
I can do it.
you wanna do that with,
Yeah, if you send it to me. I'll
yeah,
do it.
you, okay. And then, do we want to, add a half an hour early on next?
Well, that's why I held off from submitting the agenda
Yeah.
that we want to do.
Do we want to come a half an hour early to discuss this, draft on, Monday night?
So was there consensus that the majority of the people were fine with that you can add floors back?
We should,
We're taking that all out.
we're taking all
I
that
took
out.
all that out.
Yeah.
I can't keep up with what's. with
That's
that.
okay, that's good. Hopefully I did. And I will write it up tonight and send it out.
Is
Um,
there
And
any
nobody-
way, Chris, you can do it tomorrow
Yeah,
and we can get it out? to
Yeah, I think
the
that's a good idea.
Public?
I think we should also, put the specifics, to Mary's point, more specifics in the PowerPoint on the specific sections of the, of this proposal.
So I have two, so one's a last ditch effort to put affordable component into this. And then my other thing with communication is the senior housing bylaw that's been out there will be vastly different than what will be discussed Monday night. And I think it's important to have a red line version or a list of what was added, deleted, changed. It's hard to follow.
okay, we'll try it.
So just keep it going. I think it's already a red line version, correct?
Yeah, and some of those red line version pieces are coming out, so.
Most of you probably want to save it, start
Yeah.
tracking changes new from whatever got posted today, right? Call that the clean version and then track going
Yeah.
forward.
That might
Um,
be, but
That's problematic.
We'll figure out what one has been posted. I think that's a good point.
When was it posted? This week?
I know Betsy gave it to town hall like a week and a half ago,
Okay,
so
been out.
it's been out there.
Okay.
I actually think that the changes that we've talked through are relatively easy to understand, even though we've spent a long time hashing them through. I'll try to summarize them in a way that's easy to understand.
Well, if you
see.
summarize those
Yes.
half a dozen points or whatever, that could be the bullet point for the slide,
Okay.
perhaps.
All right, let's thank you for everybody for your time on that. The next topic is adult entertainment. I think this one's easier. I think we had Betsy had put together a draft, and I think we had already decided to stick with the one that we had advanced previously. Betsy, do you want to just comment on the, why you added your version back in and what you think that does for us?
So, can you hear me?
Yeah.
I had done the draft with, some pretty detailed definitions, which I thought were lacking in the version that went to town meeting last fall. And the sense that I got was everybody thought it was way too graphic. And so what I did, because the AG's office wants as much definition and as much clarity as possible for planning boards or municipalities to be able to approve or reject an adult use. So what I did was option 2, I basically referenced the definitions per Mass General Law. And then there was I put in some clarification about distances from churches, distances from daycare centers, things that you couldn't see from the exterior of the building, or, nothing could be seen from windows in the building. And so I submitted that to legal counsel as well as the original one that was submitted. And I got an email back today, which I forwarded you all, which basically says, and this was from Michelle Randazzo, legal counsel for the town. I'm quite under the weather, but I did have time to preliminarily review the 2 different versions of adult entertainment zoning bylaw. I tended to like your version better, given that the AG and the court cases have said that you need to have specific criteria for denial of the special permit, not to run afoul of the First Amendment. And the first version seems a bit light on that criteria. With that said, I have seen even more detailed versions of adult use zoning bylaws out there.
Okay.
So that's what she's provided. The option 2 version also addresses if you have an existing, say somebody went into the limited commercial district and got their special permit to have a small adult use. Then if a daycare goes in, the adult use is not considered non-conforming because they were there first. So, and the daycare is making the decision to move in there, even though the adult use is there. So it just clarifies things a little bit more. And it also, makes some additional criteria for the board to look at.
Okay, thank you. And also, I know Betsy gave both versions of this bylaw to the town clerk, so we don't have the problem of them, as well as to Tiffany. So they've both been out there.
So I guess
So
I'm just really confused. Betsy changed things, posted them without planning board conversation. I feel like that might be beyond her jurisdiction at this point. I mean, this is her job. I mean, those words just really concerned me, that Betsy changed things that she brought here and then did change them and posted them as a hearing document that we never conversed about. So
Well, that was the posted hearing document?
I don't, that's what I just heard. Correct me if I'm wrong.
There was lengthy discussion at one of the planning board meetings about the concern with the definitions. And there were comments made from several board members regarding that the version that I had provided had some more detail. So I had assumed by that it was acceptable to make some changes and post them. I don't care what you do with it. If you want to go back to the original one, that's fine. I'm just doing what I have consistently done in other communities.
I think, Sarah, I thought we voted at the last time that we were discussing this to move the one that we had currently forward. So I'm just really,
I don't know whether we voted or not. I guess, let me put your concern a different way though, Christina, and I'm gonna flip it. And that is, I'm really grateful that our planner has taken the initiative to try to improve these bylaws that we've, despite the fact we've been working on them for a long time. I think we're seeing that they were not perfect. I think we already knew that. And so I appreciate the initiative to write the public hearing notice and to get the things to town hall and to get them to town council, because that was something we were doing in the last go round. So I do appreciate the initiative. Whether we agree with it or not, is, to me, it's Betsy trying to support us in
I think
proactive
support
way.
is different than doing our job.
So that I'm just.
I guess I would ask a process question in the sense that town council reviewed
I can't.
before the prior town meeting, so what's so vastly different 3 months later?
I don't know the answer to that.
So now we've doubled up on town council time and we've gotten 2 different opinions. Which one do we go with? And I do have a concern that, I think it should be the planning board discusses and decides what's posted before things are posted. Good intentions or not, it is the planning board should.
They were both given to town clerk, both versions of the adult entertainment, just as, so in advance of us discussing. So so I don't have it, so to your town council comment, we absolutely, town council reviewed the warrant articles in November. We didn't get any comments back. So I think they relied on Mr. Bobrowski comments. I can't.
Yeah, so I'm just.
We weren't in that, it would
Yeah.
be work through the town administrator, so I don't have any.
Well, why don't we just
Yeah.
pick one version and go with it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess, again, I just, having some fiduciary responsibility, we spent 50,000 on a land use attorney, then town council reviewed the first draft, and then town council's reviewing another draft. I think we have to be cognizant of what we're spending.
Any council review we get is a drop in the bucket compared to the value of putting a good vetted document out there. So I think that right, there's multiple reviews by town council, and that's absolutely responsible fiduciary.
So I think I'm willing to go with Betsy's recommendation based on town council's recommendation, and let's get adult entertainment regulations passed and protect ourselves, to your point. So.
Yeah, I agree with that too.
So I don't have all the latest versions because I printed this stuff out over the weekend.
They were both there.
Not my folder. On tonight's folder. We did, what was our last meeting, February 3rd or something like that? We did look at both versions and we did not take a formal vote, but we all said to stick with the original.
I think that.
So now we're flip-flopping again. My vote would be to just stick with the original that was already vetted.
Both of adult entertainment were in the folder for tonight, the meeting folder for tonight. I'm looking at it right now. Yep.
They were put in there yesterday. Wasn't the weekend.
I did the best I could.
No, I mean, to Mary's point, they weren't there over the weekend.
They were not there. You're correct. So I
Sue, have you read them as a lawyer?
This is not my area of expertise, as I said before. I did feel more comfortable with the initial slim down bylaw. This one is acceptable to me because all of the lists of definitions are for the most part not included in this one. I mean, I really don't have a preference between this February 10th draft or that slimmed down version that we looked at the first time we talked about this, which was the one included in the original booklet for town meeting, I believe.
Yeah, thanks. I guess I would say, well, why wouldn't we use town council's recommendation?
I was just gonna say, if town council is telling us that one of these has more protections and is more foolproof against complaints against it, you know, if this is what, if the AG has said that we need more detail to stand on, then I'd be inclined to use whichever one the town council has recommended based on their recent evaluation.
I would agree with that.
Makes sense to me. I haven't read it though.
Yeah.
I
Well, I think the
don't know
intent,
what's really
the
in it.
intent is still the same for the public
It is.
hearing. And why don't we both read, why don't we read them both and decide which one we're gonna use. Yeah, Betsy, if you can also forward us the memo from town council on these two versions, that would be great.
It's been done.
Okay.
Leave the orange Julius out.
So is the information posted on the website? Do we know that?
I haven't looked.
It's posted on SharePoint.
No, I meant for the public, like the public notice, I think has to say that we.
The town clerk has it, and it's posted at the library, and it's been posted for the last 2 weeks.
My question is it on the town website?
I don't know if it's on the town website yet. Tiffany was asked to put it on the town website. I don't know if it's on the website yet.
Hearing date is definitely on the town website, and the documents from the past town meeting are all there. So to the extent that these are a recycling of the prior town meeting, I don't know what they are, where we are today, but so the material is there. It's,
Well, then I was wondering if Betsy's version is somewhere.
Yes, so
That's
that's
what I was
the
trying to
point. It should, both versions available to the public.
Yeah.
Both versions are available on the SharePoint drive that is tonight, that's on for tonight's meeting. And all versions have been posted for the last 2 weeks
with the town clerk.
with the town clerk in the library.
We should put them on the website as well.
Right.
The
All
template,
this should go on the website.
we're subject to Stephanie's schedule.
Yeah,
So yeah, if you could push Tiffany on that to Betsy.
Okay, let's move on. We have two more issues. One, let's take, I hope it's the administrative changes. Did that go to town council? Administrative,
The administrative changes did go to town council. I just sent everybody town council's comments regarding that, which I ended up getting a couple of days ago. The comments made, hang on a minute.
okay, well, she's,
Basically, it's the only change that was made was the issue of adding alternate members, and that the comments that were made was, yes, planning boards can have alternate members, and it's a policy decision as to who appoints them. And I think what I had put in the original draft was that the Board of Selectmen would appoint. And the one thing that was suggested is perhaps appointing in a similar fashion as when there's a resignation where you have the planning board and the board of selectmen and they all vote on members.
I agree on that.
I think we actually, the version, we had last time we talked about it, we just said that to be appointed by the planning board for staggered 3-year terms for the review of special permit applications, when sitting members of the planning board may be unable to perform their duties. So we actually last time changed this to the planning board and not the planning board and select board. I think that's what we had changed it to last time we met. What?
Not for that.
You want to, so Ron wants to suggest planning board and select board. I don't have a strong feeling one way or the other. Jointly by planning board and select
I
board.
feel like we're an elected board and as such, if we're gonna go forward with this, it should be appointed by the people that were elected.
All right, let's, I think there are two options. One is by the planning board or one is by the select board and planning board jointly. Christine, you want to make a motion?
Catherine Bellata has her hand.
Oh, yeah, Kathy.
Hi, I just think you may want to double check on I'm not sure if it's the bylaws or whatever regarding appointments within the town, because I seem to remember this discussion before, whether or not the planning board could do the appointment on their own. I apologize, I don't remember how that discussion came out, but I believe that should just be double checked. Thank you.
Okay. I think we can specify who appoints these members in this section, and then it becomes, we're giving, the town is giving us the authority or giving a joint. So I'm gonna say Christina has made a motion to have it be the planning board alone to appoint these alternate members for the purposes of reviewing special permits. Do I have a second for that?
Second.
Okay. And if this vote fails, then we will take a vote on the planning board and select board jointly. Okay. Those in favor of the motion to have it be the planning board, raise your hand. And for against? Okay, motion passes 5-2. Thank you. The other issue in this that came up, Christina raised the fact that a non-criminal disposition, let's see, violation of any provision of this bylaw shall be $25 for the first offense and $50 for the second offense and $100 for the third offense and $200 for the fourth offense in each subsequent event. And Christina has made a comment that's not enough.
I agree.
So other language I've seen, and I tried to look for it, the state maximum is just put in there whatever the state maximum is, and that when it's raised, we don't have to worry about it. We can just keep going with whatever.
All right, can you look that up?
Yeah.
And get that to us?
That's a good idea.
That's a good idea.
Looking for that,
Yeah, that's
so
a
I
good idea.
couldn't find it.
Okay. And I think that was Krista made one other comment. Wait a minute. Question.
So one other language that I saw, and I thought this was good language, so when we start talking about inspector of buildings, I saw somewhere that says also known as building inspector, so when people actually talk about the building inspector, like we do in normal day language, it makes more sense.
Okay, we can do that.
Inspector of buildings, also known as building inspector.
Yeah, sure.
I don't see the point in it.
Because when we talk about it, go see the building inspector, we never say inspector of buildings, so I think it's minor, but I think just people, what is it, when I was comparing ours to others.
We have it in a definition? No.
The building inspector,
Yeah.
it's a state.
Okay. And then you had also asked site plan review. Does this apply to special permit granted by a different special permit granting authority? Somebody wrote that question in the document.
As in the ZBA?
Yes. So does site plan review apply when special permits are granted by a different special permit, so by the ZBA, for example. And I think it does.
It should, but the question should be by the planning board, or should it be done by the ZBA?
I think it should be done by the planning board, right?
So that'd
We
be
have site
double-
plan review.
Is that double dipping, or maybe it doesn't matter?
So can we think of a situation where that would happen? Because it hasn't happened the whole time I've been on the board, so I'm just wondering.
So let's say somebody gets a variance for a shopping mall with 20 parking spaces.
So why are, like,
I'm
so
just-
can we just go back to that, the powers?
Let's finish on site plan review and then we'll
But I
come back
guess
to.
it's kind of, it's to that point though, why are we allowing the ZBA to grant a variance? Why don't, if there's things that we want in the limited commercial district, just as we did with cell signaling, why aren't we just changing the law? I feel like we're opening this up to a whole bunch of unknowns, when the whole purpose of this is to put things in there that we want. And it was our job to put things that we want in that use table to mold what could go there.
So what are you saying, Christina?
This is new language.
No, are you looking at
12.3.
12.3.3.2?
Yes.
How long is it? That is current language in our bylaw. But I think when we just passed a new limited commercial district bylaw to allow, like, for cell signaling, we should have gotten rid of this, because now we've defined what we want in the limited commercial district. That was my interpretation, but others will argue that, but I do think it needs to be removed, because I think that was the intent of the bylaw we just passed. Now they won't have to do a variance for something in the limited commercial district, because we've now opened it up to what we want.
What is this 12.3?
Okay, so here, I've just put it up on the screen.
3.3.2. Or
The ZBA has the power to hear and decide appeals or petitions for variances, from the terms of this bylaw with respect to land and structures. Set forth in general laws 48, section 10, the ZBA shall not have powers to grant use variances.
Except in the LCD.
Provided, however, a use variance may be granted in the LCD upon a written filing by the ZBA, finding by the ZBA. In addition to the requirements that, so. You're saying that that because we were
We just made the use table and we went through in the beginning, and I know many weren't here, but we went through every use that we potentially could want in the LCD. And then cell signaling came in and we changed it. So to me, that's the process that should happen. So we went through in the very beginning of recodification and said, do we want a theater? Do we want this? And so we put all those things in the use table. So to leave this language in here that the ZBA now can get a variance use for it. I think we were very successful in changing the zoning very quickly for someone who wanted it, but I just don't like keeping it open, because we went through this process and I feel it should be buttoned up.
And that's all the LCD, so it's not, it's not even defining a certain,
Is this how the dog park got in? Did the dog walking facility go through a variance for use change?
Yeah. I think we're moving now.
Okay,
Is that
I
what
tend to
Didn't
agree
go
with
through
you.
the law.
I think I tend to agree with you.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you too, actually. You never know.
It's a good careful reading.
Yeah, I agree.
So the idea is the zoning board of appeals shall not have the power to grant use variances, period.
yes.
Betsy has her hand up. Is it related to this, Betsy?
No, it was related to site plan.
Okay, we'll come back to that. So this is powers, 12.3.3, number 2. So the only thing I would wonder about is the zoning board of appeals shall not have the power to grant use variances. Doesn't section 7 kind of define,
That's just for non-conforming uses.
would be variances, right?
Right.
Well, maybe,
All of their power
That's
to
a
grant
huge
variance.
but you can do a variance not for non-conforming use.
But, I feel like,
Aren't we just taking it out of LCD versus striking their ability to ever grant a use variance? Or is that not what you were?
I think it's saying it does, they do not have the power to grant use variances.
This is a very weirdly worded paragraph because in some regards, why is it in here to say you can't do it, but you could do it here? That doesn't make any sense.
Council.
Can we get council's opinion? Well, let's strike the
Strike the LCD. part.
LCD part. Oh, I mean, also in.
Yeah.
Okay, can we get, council on that?
Could we say the zoning board of appeals shall not have the power to grant use variances except those allowed in this bylaw? Just to cover ourselves.
Okay.
What are those?
What
I don't know what they are,
they can't grant use variances.
except for those that are allowed in this bylaw.
Oh, like they could make up another use. That we haven't even thought of, you mean?
Yeah,
I think I'd
No,
want to
that's what
count.
the use table is for. If it's not in the use table, it's not
no,
allowed.
I agree, but for example, if the non-conforming use business, if that gets changed at some point. To allow them to grant a use change for a new use that's less detrimental than the existing one.
Well, shouldn't we ask town council
Yeah.
if
Yeah, maybe.
if a variant, if the ZBA has to be given this power or,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I question whether we can strip away
Yeah.
the ZBA's power to grant a use variance,
Right.
period.
let's get some
Yeah,
input
that's a
on
good
that.
idea. Let's
Okay.
just get legal counsel.
Yeah.
Okay, or maybe it's already in the console they gave us. Okay. Let's go back to site plan review. Is that what we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. I think Betsy's hand is up about something other than this.
No, it's up for site plan review.
Thank you. Go ahead.
So the issue with site plan review is it's not really part of the Mass General Law. However, enough people have acknowledged the need for site plan review, so it is allowed. And to my knowledge, the planning board is the only entity that can conduct site plan review.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay. So to answer the question that is somebody put in this document, does this apply to special permits granted by a different special permit granting authority? The answer is yes.
Yes.
Well, the answer is no, because only
No.
the planning board can perform site plan review according to.
No, but site plan review by the planning board would apply even if the special
the
permit
special
was
permit.
granted by the
Oh,
ZBA.
I see. Okay, I misunderstood.
Okay. Somebody highlighted this applicability, any new development, expansion or change of use not otherwise requiring a special permit.
So read your views that way, or else I can move the
Oh, yeah,
window
yeah.
over. If not, I can just leave it in. Weird. My bar is not. You can do that. Yeah. Delete these. Close that window. You can't see your slide. Online work. Wait, I can just move it.
Sorry. So, so the applicability of site plan review is any new development, expansion or change of use not otherwise requiring a special permit other than a single family or two family residence. Right, we don't want to do, we can't do site plan review on.
Yes.
Okay.
Wait, what is that? We can't do.
So it is saying we're not going to do site plan review on a single family or two family residence. Somebody just highlighted that. I just wanted to bring it up for discussion.
No, it says any new development, expansion or change of use other than a single family or two family.
Right.
It's under the applicability section.
So anything that requires more than 5 parking spaces.
Is a site plan review.
Of course, a 1 and 2 family house don't have 5 parking spaces, so it's kind of redundant.
Unless they do have five.
So, and because language was taken out that it needs a site plan review by the planning board, but since it's in the site plan review section, that's just by default.
Well, we might want to just be clear about that. Planning, it says the procedures the planning board shall hold. And then,
Well, we ought to have it up in the preamble.
Yeah, that's below
Clear.
okay,
the different section.
I see your.
So I have some issues with site plan.
Is it in
okay, any other questions?
Yes,
Mary.
Mary?
so. There's one big typo to start off with, the 12.6.4.1. The locus map shouldn't be 1 foot to 2,000 feet. It should be 1 inch to 2,000 feet.
Good catch.
I'm trying to understand and track. So we have site plan review here. We have site plan review in the Dover. We have site plan review for Dover amendments, and we have site plan review, I think it was section 6 that we just okayed at town
Thank
meeting.
you.
And they're all somewhat different. Why? I know it's a cut and paste thing from various towns, but I think, I mean, I've spent a lot of time looking at this, and believe me, I'm no expert, but I think I know, just have looked at it more than the average Joe. Like, so for some of the site plan spelled out, we would require a stamped registered architect, blah, blah, blah. Others, we don't specify that it needs to be stamped. Some we, for contour elevations, we specify that they need to be mapped at 2 feet intervals. Others, it's not in there. I mean, I could go on and on, but
So you're saying elsewhere in the bylaw for some of the other sections, when we have site plan review, we specify
different things.
different things?
So why don't we just refer back to this section for all of them?
Well, we
Which-
can.
Which section?
Which is the more
Well,
detailed.
I think,
Well,
Probably section 6.
there is no such thing. One is, so one, like the Dover is more detailed in some areas. And
So we should,
section 6 is more detailed than,
so why don't we use section
Wow.
6? We just pass that and get it out of this instead of just refer to section 6.
I'd like to see all, is there any way to cut and paste them all and compare? them?
Laura's intimate with section 6.
Not that intimate, but I'm reflecting on the training session I went to on site plan review, which I learned some things that clarified for me the differences between site plan with a special permit, site plan for an as of right use, and site plan with a Dover amendment, and they're all different in terms of our jurisdiction. So a Dover amendment is the most constrained because of the church and the other type of church and school, I guess, right? So there we are limited, we are more limited in the things that we can, that are under our jurisdiction.
That would
Site plan
explain
review.
that, okay?
Site plan review for by right is kind of in the middle, like Mama Bear, because we cannot reasonably deny the use because it is by right, but we can make some reasonable conditions under the site plan that affect, traffic and some of those other things that we're talking about. The paper requirements, we may want to make the same, Mary, but our jurisdiction is a little different on each one. And then the site plan with special permit is where we have kind of full jurisdiction to make conditions upon the special permit and to approve or deny the special permit based on the findings and the criteria that we put into the site plan review. So that one has the most meat on it. So that's why I think they occur in 3 different places. We may want to align them a little more.
Yeah, so I mean, I think just the feet and the inches, the scale is different in each one. I think we all can say that we need a stamp on each one. I mean, like, I think we start off the same and then whatever the differences are, that's really distinguished, like.
And maybe Betsy has some kind of standard stuff that you require with a site plan, like 1 inch. Sometimes 1 inch equals 2,000 is totally relevant, and other times you're not even gonna see the thing because the scale's gonna be so wildly off.
Maybe we
One
should
times
just say,
one-
that-
one times
or maybe
40
say
scale.
a scale prescribed by the planning board.
Well, I
Or,
think some of them, I think the special permit is prescribed by, or at least the subdivision prescribed by the state, so.
we could just say that a scale that's suitable to, to address the.
Well,
site
some
plan.
of them are already in the state law, that's what I'm saying.
But not for site plan review.
No.
She said site plan review is not in the state law, so.
So Laura, would you say that? I think it's section 6 that was voted in at last town meeting is the more as of right.
No, I think that was the special permit.
So this one is the more as of right. Which one is which, I guess, is on
Right now, this is the one that we're,
This is site plan review under administrative.
So we say site plan review is conducted for any use that requires more than 5 parking spaces.
So that's gonna be Mama Bear. Probably.
yeah, that's kind of as of right
Yeah.
for
That-
as of right uses. Right, because we can, it requires 5 parking spaces, but the use is as a right, so we get to review it because it's more than 5 spaces, but we can't deny it because it's an as a right use.
So this whole site plan review is just for parking spaces?
No,
That's what
no,
triggers it.
Okay,
that's a trigger.
That's the
Okay,
trigger to
alright,
get the site
alright,
plan review,
alright.
but it's not the only thing we're reviewing for.
right. I mean, I don't know where the consistency needs to lie necessarily.
Well, maybe going back to section 6 and just looking at it is the right, so we already got that through town meeting, it's been voted and approved, we spent quite a bit of time on that.
Can I, do you have time just to lay out the various issues? My guess is there aren't, so I need to sign off. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Is it possible just to make a quick summary of the, I mean, there aren't that many issues, like, and just align
Yeah.
them? Say,
Yeah.
section 6, section 12,
Yeah.
the section we just looked at, and Dover. I'm thinking that Dover is probably a separate thing, and we just probably, but maybe the.
It's in
the
there
scale.
somewhere, I saw it.
Yeah,
Dover's in section
Dover
12.
was the one that required the stamp. I
Right.
don't know why we wouldn't require the stamp.
Right, we're gonna look hard.
I can take a look at
I
the sort of,
think
paper
Dover is
requirements, yeah.
probably, yeah, they'd probably tell us
Yeah,
what
if
to
you could
do.
do that, that would be
Okay.
helpful.
I had one question with Dover, it's because it says, provide diameter at breast height, DBH.
Yeah.
No one would never discuss that because I
Well,
think.
I
it
know
was
that, I
what
think,
that
let me
is.
defend that one, because that is an arborist industry term, and it is referred to by its acronym, which is DBH,
Yeah.
and it has a, technical meaning at 4.5 feet above grade, the diameter of that tree, which equates to, chest height, basically.
I'm just saying that should be a definition.
Oh, I think
No.
it should be in definitions, I'm sorry, I thought you were saying to strike
I
that.
think it could be
I-
just defined in a
So
parenthesis.
here it says DBH for all existing site trees equal to or greater than 6 inches.
So they should
Yes,
spell
That's
it
how
out.
you say what is.
Spell it out. That's it.
Significant, it means trees that are
Yeah.
bigger than this
Yeah.
big around.
Yeah.
In the project site, so.
So the reason is that you care about the larger
Yeah,
trees.
oh, yeah, no, I mean, I think it's all good, I'm just saying,
I can define it in my notes. I think it's an understood industry term. Any developer who's gonna see that, they're gonna know what it means because it's out there in regular practice. So I'd be inclined
It's
to
kind of
not,
like square feet.
exactly.
in the-
It's another area measurement, basically.
It's it's as well known in the industry as square feet is in the architecture.
Yeah.
Okay, any other, so we're gonna get the, yeah, go ahead. Okay,
for insight plan.
Yeah.
The, there is a new section. Waiver of technical compliance. The planning board may, upon written request of the applicant, waive any of the technical or procedural requirements of this section where the project involves relatively simple development plans. That seems very vague to me.
So how do we prescribe it?
That's a peer review, I guess. It's, you don't need a peer review if it's simple. That's what I gather it means.
Well, you can waive, yeah, any technical or procedural
Advice.
requirements.
so let's say I was making a doctor's office allowed use,
And I wanted to have 6 parking spaces. And I had a very simple lot. I came in with a sketch. Or even a engineering, just a site plan that, and the 5, you know.
Well, don't you need measurements? I mean, we define parking space sizes.
Maybe
We.
that's not. a
but
good
you need-
example of this. I'm not sure.
No, I don't know.
I think the
What
question
section
is
are we in?
procedure.
What laws are looking at, Mary?
Change that to peer review. or-
12.6.6.
Well, I don't think we need drainage studies and all that.
No, I'm just asking for,
It just says we may.
Clarification.
It just says we may upon written request. I think it's fine because we can deny it.
Yeah, if we think it's
Well, you can
unreasonable.
say the planning board finds it's not,
We
applicable
don't need more technical.
yeah, I think it's okay.
We'll need.
Yeah,
I think it's fine.
and We'll need dimensions.
Yeah, okay.
so can I go back to page 1 on this?
Yeah, what section?
Enforcement 12.2. 12.2.2, so penalties, and I think this is what we currently.
This complaints. What does it say?
Oh, I think I tried to add that or try to sign it and ended up there. We don't have like a procedure.
Okay, well, let,
That's what I, I put that in there.
okay, yeah, okay. So, let's talk about penalties first, and then, we'll get to that issue. I didn't notice that. Okay, penalties.
And I think this is current language, but I think if we're gonna propose, we're just, so it says any person violating any provision of this bylaw upon conviction. What's conviction? Getting a cease and desist, a letter from the inspector of buildings, going in front of what does conviction mean?
That'd be one for council too, I think.
Because that would then trigger, I would think, the fines. And how are we collecting fines?
Well, we just get rid of upon conviction.
Well, there's probably a trigger point. Whatever that is, and conviction, I guess,
I
could
would
be
think it
however
would almost be any person violating any provision of the bylaw as stated in writing or something.
Okay, let's ask town council for
Yeah.
advice. I think that's a
Who
good,
decides that there's been
right?
a violation? Is it the building inspector?
Well, this is his, yeah, this is under
Yeah.
inspector of buildings, so.
We are
C
not
Street.
enforcement.
No, it wouldn't be us. It's inspector of buildings.
So after you cut all the.
Yeah, nobody find the guy at
Yeah.
C Street, so.
Because I think, yeah, I mean, in some ways, this section, opens up a whole lot of questions because, if somebody's been convicted or, not in compliance, how long are they allowed to be in compliance? What's the time frame? When does it get kicked to a board? I mean, none of that's really.
Well, this is all Bobrovsky language, so there's gotta be a legal something.
Basis for.
Well, I think what we need to do then is come up with regulations after this that says, and that's part of the complaint part, like we're just a little light. We need,
Yeah, that's.
and it says regulations, but we don't have
Do you
them, like.
think, again, do you think there are state ones that we can just point to? Or
No,
that are-
these are ours, like, this gets filed with our administrator, like, these are regulations.
No,
that
like
we-
common practice that we could just point to that the state requires a certain process you go through.
There may be other regulations we could copy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure other towns have one that we can whip up, but every section has regulations. The planning board has this. I mean, every section seems to have these regulations.
Yeah.
But we don't have them yet.
Yep.
Yeah, 'cause I mean, we don't have a conviction process.
Right. So, to your point about complaints, Christine, that's so you suggested a complaints section here.
So it just gave a little bit, we have nothing, like, so this is just, how you would file something with the building inspector and this is 14 days. I mean, we're not his boss, but I looked in a few places and this was just common.
Was it in the zoning or was it in regulations?
It was in the exact same place.
Can we ask town council
Of
for some
course, yeah.
suggestions about
And
that?
The current one has enforcement request.
It's like 2 lines.
So I
It's
mean,
like
I
if
just
you're
mean
not
like it's not
happy
even
with the
concept.
first request, actually it doesn't really even tell you where to go. If you're not happy, then you have to go to the ZBA. That's what it basically says. Which gets to my last point, on this one, let's see. Very last page, appeal. Any appeal of the planning board's decision in the section shall be made pursuant to a court of competent jurisdiction. Isn't it just the ZBA?
And what section are we in now?
It's the very last line, 1287.
Yeah,
Save the question, put that one for the town.
Decision is section 2 of the minutes.
I mean, we need to let people. I'm just thinking the curb cut was denied on, we denied the curb cut and then they went to ZBA, just practically speaking, that's where it went, right? So I think people should be able to read this and know where to go. This isn't really clear.
Yeah, so we asked him,
Okay.
okay. TBD is town council. Okay,
According to Sarah Melish, the
Betsy.
ZBA hears all appeals.
Yeah. okay, Betsy, comments?
So the court of competent jurisdiction is either the land court or the superior court. The applicant has their choice.
But they could go to the ZBA first.
They could, depending on, yeah, they could. But if the ZBA denies, then they're going to either land court or superior court.
Yeah, in there and then, and or competent court and then see what town council do.
Why don't we look at the MGLs? Sue, can you look that
I
up?
am looking at it.
Okay.
It's confusing. We definitely need an opinion other than mine on.
Well, we have 30 days. I think we need to make this a little more clear for people.
Okay, good, thank you.
So,
Can I do 2 quick ones?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Were you gonna speak?
well, let's finish this first. I just want to talk about process.
12.5.5 referral, it's down 3/4 of the way. It's basically saying, bring this to another board or agency and they have to respond within 35 days. So I take that as like, you know, to the fire chief or police chief or something. 35 days seems like a long time if we're in a,
It's pretty standard,
it is. Okay.
usually 30 days, I think, but whatever.
Okay, and then 12.5.9. For whatever reason, and I don't know why, we increased lapse time from 2 years
years
to
to-
36 months. Why?
Probably a Bobrowski thing. I don't have a strong feeling. What's the board's thought,
Run it by council. I'm leery of,
right?
Maybe Betsy, is it two?
It
I
was
think
2
it is
years
2
in our
years.
current,
2 years, and I'm just, my question being, and we had issues with that we should change it. If not, I don't know why we're changing it.
yeah.
No, the
Yeah.
36 months is accurate. They changed the law. And what has to happen is if I'm granted a special permit and I go through my appeal period, I have to make substantial use or construction within 3 years or else my special permit lapses.
Okay,
And
so
that's a
that's-
determination made by the code enforcement officer who will make the determination as to whether the use is substantially underway.
okay, so it's now state law to answer the question about, we used to have it as 2 years. But
It
now it's
used to be 2 years
Okay,
and they changed it about 5 or 6 years ago to 3 years.
A vague Bellevue.
Exactly. I think that's
okay,
watching.
okay,
One, I know like the criteria used to be just not really named anything under special permits. And the language changed a little bit and maybe someone just needs to refresh me when we did section 6. But I feel like the language changed and no special permit shall be granted, this is the previous language, unless the applicable special permit granting authority finds the proposed use in harmony with the purpose and intent of this bylaw and will not be detrimental or injurious to the neighborhood in which it is to take place, and that all the requirements, blah, blah, blah. That language is gone.
but I think it is one of the criteria.
Yeah, it is.
If you look at
So
the,
now if you look at 12.5.2,
and in 6. If I go back to my sharing of my screen, so,
it's
So I
just-
guess that was in the opening line and then all the sub reasons are below, but
so if you look at the 6, if you look at the screen, this is a summary of 6.3. Site develop, and if you look at here is a list of the special permit granting authority shall look at determination, adverse effects, the proposed use will not outweigh its benefits and neighborhood character, impacts on the environment, traffic and safety, including parking. So I think the same things are included there. And we can't change section 6 right now anyway. So,
section 12 is it, so there it
No.
says it's not adverse to the neighborhood, that would be different than in harmony. Exactly. What was it? So I'm just saying section 6 doesn't need to change, but I feel like the language from the old section 752 needs to be put back into this criteria.
12.5.2 is saying determination that the adverse effects of the proposed use will not outweigh its beneficial impacts to the town or neighborhood.
Which is completely different than what was in the original special permit language.
they're consistent.
I think they're very different.
Is there a consensus that there's some change that needs to be made, or are we okay with the way it is right now? Or tonight? We will have,
Can you read it one more time? What the old language, that first sentence that you're.
are you talking about site plan or is it special?
No, I was marking up things to check.
So it's the old section 7.5.2. It's basically, unless the applicable special permit granting authority finds that the proposed use is in harmony with the purpose and intent of the bylaw and will not be detrimental or injurious. So it's like a high level statement, and I think that's different than, weighing things. Like I don't feel like they're two different ways to look at this, and I feel like the proposed use will not
I
outweigh.
think this is more
the intent
strict
is-
than what's currently.
Yeah, the beneficial impacts have to outweigh the adverse impacts, and then you consider all of the things that follow. Traffic flow, utilities, neighborhood character, scenic view sheds, natural environment.
Should be much more specific.
But I don't think a beneficial impact is the same as uses in harmony with the neighborhood. I think they're different.
Well, in harmony's blander.
Well, you're talking about this, you're talking about proposed use will not outweigh its beneficial impacts to the town, and what you're reading.
Or
the neighborhood.
For the neighborhood, and what you're reading is that it's in harmony with the neighborhood, right? So now it's becoming the planning board's decision to do a pro and con list and say, okay, well, we think this is.
Yeah,
It
that's
always will be with a special permit.
But that you take it, but there's no harmony with the neighborhood. I think also,
Oh, it is number 5 is neighborhood character.
yeah, I think this is much more specific. Harmony is so vague.
so maybe 5 could just be in harmony with neighborhood character and social structures.
That would be fine.
And so the language here is, no special permit shall be granted unless the special permit granting authority determined that its proposed use will not be detrimental to the surrounding neighborhood in light of each. And this one is outweighs, and so I think the language is different, and I think the outcomes are different, and I'm not sure that this language is acceptable to me.
I think it's stronger.
So do I.
For who?
For
For the
making
town,
sure that the
protecting the
town
town.
interests are protected and that the development is beneficial, meeting these criteria.
Forcing us to weigh each of these issues.
I think that's what we currently have. Because this is,
Well, now we could just say it's in harmony. We could-
no, we list out
There's a
all
different
the
test.
views and vistas and impact on water and sewer and all that.
I think with any development, you're weighing impacts, which the planning board can decide that some of them may be adverse. But that the beneficial parts of the beneficial elements of the development outweigh those impacts, which in this case are called adverse. And so that's the only way you can get to the criteria. In harmony is more of a
So,
visual
but that's
statement, I would
just
think.
just the language, and I think
Yeah.
that's a good addition to number 5, that's fine. But I feel like the test here is will not be detrimental to the surrounding neighborhood in light of each, or this one says, well, the proposed use will not outweigh its beneficial impacts. I think they're different. I think those are 2 different tests. This is uses and impacts to the town and the neighborhood, and this is detrimental to the neighborhood. I
I
think
think
they're
the town use is broader than the neighborhood, and that's, so that you have to state the town and the neighborhood, because we're not simply looking out for what is the right thing for the neighborhood, but what is the right thing for the town with consideration given to the neighborhood and its context in it, but it's always gonna be a measuring of, how can we make this a beneficial project that where it's benefits outweigh.
Well, I don't know why we can't leave the original language and still put these things in here. I don't know why we needed to change that.
I just think it's stronger. I think it's stronger and more defensible.
You're saying add the language.
No, I think the last. More detrimental to me is different than outweighs the adverse effects.
And ask town council. I mean, I think it's written this way because it seems to me it's more defensible.
I guess, yeah, that's a good question to town council. Which
Can
one's
you
more
send me
defensible?
specific language, because I'm a little brain dead on it right now. You're gonna send me language for section 12.5.2 additional,
7.5.2.
12.12.
12.5.2 is the new.
But add in language from
7.5.
7. We don't have to 0.5.2.
Yeah.
Okay, is that okay? And then we'll ask town council. I'm gonna make a list for them. Great, and we don't have to finalize the motion for tonight. Okay, we have one more topic, and that is it's the accessory dwelling unit changes. Is there any discussion on those?
Do we want to move this forward?
Oh, well, yeah, to the,
Would be like first.
We took out swimming pool and all that, right?
Yes.
yeah, we didn't, so the 4 we have moved for, that we've advertised the public hearing for are the 3 we've just discussed, plus the ADU change of reducing the double lot, reducing the number of parking spaces and changing
Age of the house.
the age of the house to one that has been in existence with an occupancy permit for 2 or more years. All right, hearing no comments, I'll move on. I did put together a draft PowerPoint. I'm happy to just receive comments back from people to incorporate. I think we have some work to do, particularly around the senior housing, to be clearer about what's in the proposed bylaw.
Just back on
Yeah.
the administration.
Yeah.
We talked about a lot of getting the answers from town council. And do we have a document posted for the public on this?
Yeah, I think most of the things we're getting town council are fairly minor.
Minor, but we have to have final wording by March 2nd, which is a week from tomorrow.
We have to find final warrant wording and probably the motions a little bit after that. I asked them, did they respond?
They
Did
respond, they want to have somebody at the select board meeting on the 6th.
Okay,
So to
I think
explain.
we're pretty close.
Okay.
I'm not.
I'll take it, leave it in your hands.
The warrant is a summary of the,
Right,
but
the
then
wording,
the motion has to happen very soon after.
right, so.
Right.
We're, you know, we're up against, well, we're a week away. So what-
We're a whole week away.
So let's just go through this. We get public comments Monday,
And then we vote to move a warrant forward and then we.
on Monday,
Mhm.
and then we don't meet again.
I have to find out from Greg when he needs the final motions. I'm hoping we can do it at our first meeting in March. The final
Okay.
motions.
All right,
That's what I'm hoping. If that, we'll have to meet the first Monday in March
that's the same day, the select board, that would be
Yeah,
the
but
6th.
to finalize the motions,
Okay,
but we're,
okay,
okay,
Well, I thought we were gonna add that it had to be a conforming lot.
Oh, yes.
what do we, which,
The excess for ADU. We took out the double the lot size.
I
Oh,
think
no,
that-
no, it's
already in
it's
there.
on there.
It's already in there.
Yeah.
Okay. So any, please send me comments on the PowerPoint,
where's the PowerPoint?
on the SharePoint.
We should also make sure we get stuff up on the town website.
I have sent it to Tiffany
Well, we're
a
gonna
week,
make sure
2
we-
weeks ago, so I know she put the, I haven't looked, I sent it to her twice.
Who's gonna modify admin section 12?
I'm gonna take the,
You can
Yeah,
take
but
both
we-
on senior housing and.
no,
admin?
he's doing senior house, I'm gonna write up the notes tonight. Or
And
maybe
what about
tomorrow,
admin? You're
first
gonna-
at 7:30.
and You're gonna take these admin.
I'll take the
changes?
admin changes and get them to town council with Beth, I'll work with Betsy
Okay,
and senior housing admin. Adult entertainment, we're asked. We're kind of,
Town council.
town council, we're waiting to see their results, their input. And really, it's which motion. The content is this, the intent is the same for the public hearing, I think. Okay. Any, we said we would take any public comment not on the zoning, any comment?
Public comments?
Taking public comment, but not on the zoning changes, any other matters? We're gonna take public comment on the zoning changes at our public hearing on Monday.
I think that any new construction should have to have mandatory parking for additional vehicles somewhere. I suggest that the town DPW lot, which will be changed, would be a good place to build perhaps a commercial parking garage with preferential lot assignment to people who are building in a restricted area where they just cannot provide parking for themselves on their own lot.
Great, thank you for that comment. Good comment. Anything else? Any other public comment? Thank you for coming tonight.
I move we adjourn.
So, second? All in favor? Opposed? All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.